Then the second one, coming from the 23rd Psalm, it's going to be a slightly different version called the Tanaka version of the 23rd Psalm. So at this time I invite Rob Asplund and Ann Asplund to come forward.
There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to uproot, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search, and a time to give up, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to mend, a time to be silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and time for peace.
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to water in places of repose. He renews my life. He guides me in the right paths as befits his name. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long years.
One of the great opportunities that we have in these services is to remember lives that are well lived. And so I invite Barbara Burgess, and then John Eric Burgess, and Kristen Urie, and then Robert Asplund to come and share stories of Betty.
Overwhelmed by the people here today. Thank you for coming and helping us honor my mother's life. Thank you all for your support you gave my mom and our family over the last 5 months. The cards, the notes, the calls, the visits were so appreciated, much more than you really can imagine. I also want to thank Noel for the lovely piano music today, and Rick and Don for this service, and for their loving watch care over my mom throughout this time. They were sincere, comforting, and uplifting. Thank you. Betty Jean, as she was called growing up on the eastern shore of Maryland, saw a great many changes during her 88 years. She was raised on a farm outside a small town where everyone did know your name. Before they got electricity, she did her homework on the dining room table using an oil lamp to read by. The winter was bitter cold without storm windows or central heat, and she used to ride in a horse-drawn sleigh with her father to bring supplies to her grandmother. Mom graduated from high school at 16 and moved to Baltimore to go to business college, and consequently got a job working for $14 a week. A good job in those days. She met our father at the Y dance, and they fell in love dancing to the music of Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller. I came along a year after they were married, and Jim followed 13 months after me. Bob came a year and a half after Jim. We lived in Hanover, Manhattan, and finally we settled in West Caldwell, in the house that she lived for 55 years. She was a child of the Depression, which left an indelible mark on her life. She was thrifty and frugal, but also responsible and generous. Mom was part of the greatest generation, also impacted her ideals and her actions, voting in every election for 67 years. Her friendships spanned the years of her youth in Kent County, Maryland, to the realm of her friends in this area. Friends from her working days in Fairfield, the Women's Club, this church, her bridge groups, the hospice thrift shop, her neighborhood, and her PEO group. She participated in most of these until just recently. She was usually ready to go and do whenever needed or invited, and often was the driver. My brother's scared. To my family, living the closest in proximity, she was a part of almost all we did. She enjoyed and celebrated our family's fun and successes, and worried and was relieved when troubles were encountered and resolved. We marveled at her ability to remember funny stories about each of her children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren, or about her nephew's adventures in far-off places, or hijinks of their children or their dogs. She had a close relationship with her sister and brother-in-law, calling and chatting almost every day about people they knew and where they lived and who lived there now. I learned that she was the one who wanted to hear about me. She was the one who listened. She listened and reflected and made thoughtful suggestions. Life experience gave her astute perspective. I wish I had listened to her story more, though it was not always easy to get from her. Our relationship evolved as we aged. I realized how fortunate I was to have that solid source of unfailing love and acceptance, the gift of friendship, of pure, unselfish friendship between mother and child is cultivated with respect, mistakes, experience, disappointments, patience, and love. I have that embedded in me forever, and I hope to provide that to my children and their spouses. Thankfully, I realized that my mother was my first friend, my strongest friend, my longest friend,